Jonathan Pierce sat alone at his usual table by the window of the small cafe, staring at his laptop screen without really seeing it. At 37, he'd built a pharmaceutical consulting empire worth hundreds of millions, but tonight, at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, he was too exhausted to care. Another 18-hour day, another missed meal, another night heading back to an empty penthouse. He ordered his third coffee of the evening, barely noticing when the young waitress set it down beside him. "You look tired," she said quietly. Jonathan glanced up, prepared to give a polite dismissal, but something in her tone made him pause. She was maybe 28, with blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing the cafe's brown apron over a simple white shirt. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They held a deep sadness that mirrored his own exhaustion. "I am tired," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. The waitress studied him for a moment, then said softly, "You look tired like my husband did before he left. That same exhaustion in your eyes, like you're running from something you can't escape." The words hit Jonathan harder than expected. "Your husband left you because he was tired? He died because he was tired, worked himself to death trying to provide for us. He was only 32. Collapsed at his desk from a heart attack brought on by stress and exhaustion." Her voice was steady, but filled with old grief. "You have that same look he had those last few months, like you're already halfway gone." Jonathan felt his carefully constructed walls crack. "I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for yours too. I haven't lost anyone. Haven't you? You're sitting alone in a cafe at 9 at night, working instead of living. That's a different kind of loss." She paused, then added, "I'm Emma, and I probably shouldn't have said any of that. My manager would be horrified. But watching you reminded me so much of my husband that I couldn't stay silent." She turned to leave, but Jonathan found himself saying, "Wait, please, sit for a minute, if you can." Emma glanced around the nearly empty cafe, then slid into the chair across from him. "I have 5 minutes before I need to clean tables. Tell me about your husband." "Why?" "Because you saw something in me that scared you enough to break professional boundaries and speak up. I want to understand what you saw." Emma looked out at the snowy street. "His name was Michael. He was an architect, brilliant, driven, determined to give me and our daughter everything. But everything required working constantly. 18-hour days, weekends. He'd come home so exhausted, he'd fall asleep eating dinner. I begged him to slow down, but he always said, just one more project, just one more deadline." She met Jonathan's eyes. "Then one Tuesday afternoon, I got a call that he'd collapsed. By the time I got to the hospital, he was gone. Our daughter was too. She barely remembers him now." Jonathan felt his throat tighten. "I'm so sorry, Emma. The last thing he said to me that morning was that he was tired, and I told him to take it easy, but I didn't insist. I let him go to work anyway. I've regretted that every day for 5 years." She wiped her eyes quickly. "So when I see someone with that same exhausted look, I can't help but say something. Maybe I can't save my husband, but maybe I can warn someone else." "What would you have done differently? If you could go back?" "I would have made him stop, taken a vacation, even if we couldn't afford it, made him see a doctor, reminded him that no amount of success was worth dying for." Emma stood up. "I should get back to work. I'm sorry for dumping all that on you. You're a customer, not my therapist." "Thank you," Jonathan said sincerely, "for caring enough about a stranger to tell me the truth." After Emma returned to work, Jonathan sat staring at his laptop. He looked at his calendar, packed solid for the next 6 months, at his email inbox with 347 unread messages, at the dark circles under his eyes reflected in the window. He thought about Michael, who worked himself to death at 32, leaving behind a widow and a daughter who barely remembered him. He thought about his own isolated life, his own exhaustion, his own belief that just one more deal, just one more success would somehow make it all worthwhile. Jonathan closed his laptop and called his assistant. "Cancel everything for the next 2 weeks, he said. "Sir? You have the board meeting, the investor presentation, cancel it all. Reschedule. Delegate. I don't care. I need 2 weeks off starting now." After the call, Jonathan waited until the cafe closed. Emma emerged from the back, pulling on her coat, surprised to see him still there. Is everything okay? She asked. I wanted to thank you properly, and to ask you something. Jonathan stood. When was the last time you took a day off? Emma laughed without humor. I work 2 jobs to support my daughter. Days off aren't really an option. What if they were? What if someone covered your shifts? And you could take your daughter somewhere special? That's a nice fantasy, but reality doesn't work that way. It could. Emma, you probably saved my life tonight. You made me see what I was doing to myself. Let me return the favor. He pulled out his business card. I own Pierce Consulting. I'd like to set up a trust fund for your daughter's education, and I'd like to pay you for consulting work. What consulting work? Teaching me how to live instead of just work. You've figured out something I haven't, how to find meaning in life, even after devastating loss. I'll pay you well for the lessons. Emma stared at him. This is insane, maybe, but no more insane than working yourself to death, which is what I was doing until you intervened. Please, let me help you while you help me. Over the next weeks, Jonathan took his first real vacation in a decade. He spent time with Emma and her 5-year-old daughter Lily, learning what it meant to slow down, to be present, to value moments over meetings. Emma taught him to cook, to play in parks, to find joy in simple things. Michael would have loved this, Emma said one afternoon as they watched Lily play. He always talked about retiring early so we could spend time together, but he thought he needed to secure our future first. He didn't realize he was sacrificing the present for a future that never came. I was doing the same thing, Jonathan admitted. Building wealth without purpose. You changed that. You did the work. I just pointed out what you couldn't see. Jonathan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just a widow serving coffee, but a strong woman who'd survived loss and rebuilt her life with grace. Emma, I know this is complicated. I'm still figuring out how to live differently, and you're still grieving your husband. But I'd like to keep seeing you, not as a consultant, but as someone I care about. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Jonathan, you remind me of Michael in good ways, driven, intelligent, kind. But I'm terrified. What if you fall back into old patterns? What if I lose someone else to overwork? I won't let that happen. You taught me the cost. I've restructured my entire company to prioritize balance, delegated responsibilities, hired a COO, set strict work hour limits. He took her hand. I'm not Michael, but I am someone who was headed down the same path until you had the courage to tell me the truth. Let me prove I've learned. 6 months later, Jonathan proposed to Emma in the same cafe where they'd met. He bought the cafe and renamed it Michael's Place in honor of her late husband. This is where you saved my life, Jonathan said, kneeling beside her chair. Where you looked at a stranger and saw someone worth saving. You told me I looked tired like your husband before he left. You were right. I was leaving life, leaving presence, leaving everything that matters. You brought me back. He held up a ring. I'll never replace Michael, but I promise to honor his memory by living the kind of life he wanted, but never got to experience. A life where family comes first, where tired means rest instead of push harder, where success is measured in moments like these instead of dollars earned. Will you marry me? Emma, crying and laughing, said yes. At their small wedding, Emma spoke about Michael during her vows. My first husband taught me about love through his life and his loss. He showed me the cost of putting work before family. Jonathan learned that lesson without having to pay Michael's price, because I had the courage to speak up, and Jonathan had the wisdom to listen. She took Jonathan's hand. Thank you for hearing my warning. Thank you for changing your life before it was too late. Thank you for showing Lily that success and presence can coexist. Thank you for honoring Michael by living differently. Jonathan squeezed her hand. Emma told me I looked tired like her husband before he left. Those words changed everything. They made me choose life over legacy, presence over profit, love over loneliness. Sometimes the greatest gift is someone caring enough to tell us hard truths. He looked at his bride and stepdaughter. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for teaching me that the best way to honor Michael's memory is to live fully in the time we have. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to change course. Sometimes miracles look like tired waitresses speaking uncomfortable truths. Sometimes they look like widows brave enough to confront strangers about their self-destruction. Sometimes they look like men wise enough to hear warnings and change course before it's too late. If this story touched you, like, share, and subscribe. Comment about times when someone's honest observation changed your path, or when you spoke up to help someone. Your stories remind us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell someone the truth they need to hear.